Welcome back to the Do Brand You channel. It's great to have you here, and I have with us today a great guest. Her name is Ashley Taylor, and welcome, Ashley. It's great to have you on this show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Ashley is also in New Zealand, like myself. She's an air traffic controller. She's young, but she's already an author. She started a podcast. And last month, she celebrated the first anniversary of a community that she co-founded. I'm really inspired with Ashley because of how young she is and what she's done and what drives her to do what she does. So what I want to get into first, Ashley, is if you could share the story of, how did you become an air traffic controller and why?
Yeah. So, it's quite a long story, I guess. I kind of always knew what air traffic control was, because my dad was a pilot, and unlike what people think, they're not these people on the apron that wave their glow sticks. They're the people in the funny looking towers. So whenever we would drive past the airport or whatever, I'd see the tower and ask my dad what that was. And he explained what air traffic control was and how it works, and, what it means to him as a pilot and everything like that. And so my parents kind of both said, well, mom being the other parent, had always kind of said that I'd be pretty good at it, because the whole principle of air traffic is basically organizing things. That's how I kind of see it. And I kind of like to explain it like it's playing Tetris. You're trying to fit all these shapes together. And that's what you're doing with air traffic, is you're fitting things together and taking into account different shapes. And that might mean a different aircraft, like turbulence or speed or all these different things. So I feel like I kind of always saw myself as an air traffic controller, or as an option, since I was really young. And I kind of feel like I'm someone that always wants to do the hardest thing, and it doesn't mean I'm always good at it. When I try the hardest thing, I remember in school, everyone was kind of poo-hooing like calculus and taking physics as a subject. And I was like, well, I'll do it then. Like, I can do it. And I didn't do very well at it, but I always wanted to do the hardest thing. And we had like a careers day at work once, and someone came in and was talking to us, and then asked all of us in my year group what the most stressful job in the world was. And a whole bunch of people said air traffic control. And that's when I kind of like locked in on it and was like, well, that's what I want to be if that's the hardest thing. And so the years went by, and we have to be 21 years old to hold an air traffic license. So I had to go at law and business at university, didn't like it, and then was just working and traveling until I turned 21. And then somehow I got in. It's very difficult to get in. It's a very long process to like apply. There's different rounds. Anyways, I got in. And the reason I wanted to do it, other than it being a difficult thing, and I always wanted to challenge myself, was that I feel like as a kid, my dad would always come home safe. He'd always come home, right? And a lot of the kids I grew up with in Dubai all had dads that were pilots too, and they all came home. And I felt like air traffic was a purpose to keep people safe. That's essentially what it is. It's controlling traffic in the air, so they don't crash into each other. So I felt really inspired to do something that had a real purpose. I felt like I would go to work every day and feel like when I left that I'd done a really good thing. I've kept people safe. I've brought people home to their families, like I always kind of experienced as a kid. Because like as much as pilots need to, fly the plane and keep the passengers safe, air traffic also has a really big role in that too. So that's one of the big inspirations, was having a purpose at work, which was keeping people safe. So that's why I wanted to do it.
I love that story, Ashley. And did you find it difficult when you got into the training initially to actually, get through the training? Because I know you were quite young compared to other people.
Yeah. So the training was so difficult. It was like climbing. It was like, you know how goats can like scale mountains that are like
Yeah.
sheer drops?
Yeah.
That's what it felt like, just trying to be a goat climbing this mountain, except I wasn't a goat. It was really, really hard. And I think the hardest thing for me was that I had no aviation background at all.
Mm.
You don't have to have an aviation background. It definitely helps, but you don't need it. At least in New Zealand, and I'm pretty sure everywhere else, you only need to have passed like your high school. You only need to have graduated from high school and passed your, school subjects and everything. That's all you need. You don't need a degree. You don't need to be a pilot or anything else. So that was really difficult because just like learning the phonetic alphabet was like, I can't remember all this. And like the only way I could do it was when, when you're driving home, which took me like 20 minutes to drive home. And all of the license plates, I would look at those and it would say like
Mm.
ABC. And I try to quickly remember and just read it off kind of fluently or try and just kind of learn that way. That was really difficult. And that's just something that there was a couple pilots and people who knew about, kind of new aviation-y things on my course. And so
Mm.
that wasn't really a challenge for them, but it was really, it was really, really difficult. It's a very short training period. It took me a year to go from zero to having a license. And I think it's set up that way to kind of like filter out people that can't keep up, because it is an industry where safety is like the principle. That's all. That is
Yeah.
what it is. And you need to keep up and you need to learn things and pass the 80, 90, 100% exams you do. So it was incredibly intense. And the other thing that made it hard was that I'd been out of that studying world for so long. Like I tried law and business, like I said, and I hated it and I didn't do very well because I just didn't like it. And so I'd been out of that, like, what would you say, that sort of mindset of studying and getting into routine of
Right.
studying and everything like that. So very difficult, but very rewarding once I actually got my license.
Yeah, for sure. And so I know on this show we talk a lot about, and I talk with other guests about how they are actually able to live and do the best version of themselves. How are you able to do that when you have this pressure that you are under for, achieving, success in the course at such a short time? And just also on a note with that is, that's why the course is designed to be that much pressure and that much stress, because that's the job you're going into. So they
Yeah.
need to make sure that really the ones that survive can handle that stress. So how do you manage stress like that?
Do you mean like how I manage the stress of the job as well as the other things I do, or just the
Well,
stress?
I think first of all is, how did you manage being in a course where you
Yeah.
say clearly other people knew a lot more than you did? They were older than you. They knew about aviation. It was
Yeah.
extremely difficult. How did you manage? Why did you not quit?
I I think at the time I had an identity to the job, which I didn't actually have the job yet. It was when I was training. And it was that challenge that I wanted to do the hardest thing, or one of the hardest things. And so it was that kind of purpose of completing a challenge and getting over the hurdle that really just like kind of kept me going, and just kept realizing that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, kind of. But I feel like the as much as the training was really difficult and hard, I feel like now the job isn't really like that. Like I don't go to work and leave super stressed out. I
Yeah.
feel like I feel like I just want to say this because I think people have the perception that it is stressful. But I feel like for me the word stress sounds out of control, and that's the complete opposite of air
Mm,
traffic control. So I
right.
prefer to kind of frame it as high pressure. There's definitely moments of high pressure, but you're in control, if that kind of
Yeah.
makes sense. So I
Yeah.
I feel like now that I've done it for about 4 years, I definitely have a what would you say, kind of like a I can't think of the word, but I guess I'm used to it now.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that purpose of a challenge was what kept me going.
Yeah. For sure. And so one of the things that other people have talked about when I've talked to them on these interviews is this concept that, you as your own person, your own identity, your own brand, whatever, you actually aren't alone. You exist within an ecosystem of other people. And so can you kind of share a couple of people within the air traffic control space that were significant in assisting you, mentoring you, helping you, and why? What did they do to help you to be that best version of who you are?
I can think of three people off the top of my head, but there's definitely more. And
Yeah.
all of them have something in like something similar between how like my relationship with them was. And it was the amount of empathy that they had. I
Mhm.
feel like within this job there's it is yeah, it's very demanding, and it can certainly have an impact on you mentally, um, with different types of challenges that just come up. And so I feel like something wonderful that came out of the job that I haven't experienced in another company I've ever worked for before is the amount of genuine empathy that people have. And I think
Right.
um, that's something that will make or break you, really. And I think that with them showing me the amount of empathy and sympathy and care and generosity they had for me, and the amount of time they
Right.
gave me whenever I needed
Mm.
help or assistance or I had questions, that really just inspired me of how just amazing human beings can be, really. And
Right.
that inspired me to want to um, become like a peer support volunteer so that I could give to others what others gave to me within the realm of aviation in New Zealand.
I love that. I love that how it's so true, isn't it? How we are kind of cared for, or people connect with us on a personal level, build a relationship with us, and it inspires us because we're humans to do the same. And that's, yeah, like you
Yeah.
say, that's exactly what you've done. Well, I don't want too much more time to go by before we get into the other reason I wanted to have you here for a conversation and to share with the people that are listening here on the channel. And that is that before all of this really happens of getting into air traffic control, when it was still just an idea, uh, and it was at the age of 20, is that you had this concept to write this book, Where Are You From? A question that challenges identity in a culturally blended world. And of course, I will say then, for those listening, if you don't know, Ashley is my daughter.
Mhm.
But I wanted to interview her not as my daughter, as a person that I know will inspire all of you listening. But I want to talk about this book, Ashley, and how it started and your part in it, with the backdrop of you becoming an air traffic controller. In that, why at the age of 20 did you say to me, we need to write a book? Can you, and I think it would be helpful if you went back and explained a little bit about our trip to Prague.
Yeah. So we went to Prague when I was 20, I think. I don't
Yeah.
know what year that was.
Yeah. Yeah. It was,
Anyways, and we went there for a week. I went home to Dubai. I was living in Wellington at the time, and I went back to Dubai for like 2 or 3 weeks or something, and we thought it would be fun to go on a trip to Prague. So when we were in Prague, we, for
well,
whatever
Ashley,
reason,
before you go on, can you just explain where does Dubai fit in the picture of who you are?
oh, sure. So I grew up in Dubai because my dad worked for Emirates. So I lived there permanently until I was 9, and then we moved to New Zealand, and I went to boarding school. So, and my dad still worked for Emirates in Dubai. So we kind of had this like
Two homes.
two homes basically. So I was back in Dubai quite frequently, and so that's why I still kind of refer to it as home, even though
Yeah.
um, Dad doesn't work there anymore. But yeah.
And
So
so, and then also we'll just clarify. So you grew up in Dubai. That's where, kind of home was for you. And then what is your nationality outside of just where you grew up?
yeah, so by citizenship, I'm a dual citizen, and I have an American and a New Zealand passport.
Right. Through your
Um,
parents. Right.
yeah.
All right. So So now, me and you are on a trip. We are in Prague for a week. What happens?
Yeah, we just kept having conversations about it started off with the question, where are you from? And we started talking about kind of how difficult we find that question.
Right.
And throughout the week, we just kept coming up with different concepts that were kind of a domino from the question, where are you from? That kind of all had to relate to our culturally blended identity. Things like dealing with grief when moving, or grief found in many other different circumstances within living a culturally blended life, and things like defining home when you're moving to different countries or different places, losing homes, all of these different things that kind of come along with home. And in the same breath as that, we were discussing belonging and how that fits into your culturally blended identity. And the reason that we kept talking about this was because we felt that we had so many people disagree with our own perception of where we're from. And like, we would say, I'm from this place, and then people would say, no, you're not. Where are you really from? And so it kind of came from this insecurity, this lack of confidence in our culturally blended identity that we both shared an experience with. And so we kept talking about our experiences. And through that conversation, we started to kind of come up with ways to deal with that, sort of as like two people who have the same challenge, thinking like, okay, well, how can we get from here to a better place, essentially? And I don't know. It was really special, that trip, because we just kept having conversations about it. And when we left and we were back in Dubai and we went out for lunch, we were kind of like, we should really write a book. And I really wanted to write a book because I knew there was people out there that have been dealing with the same challenges.
Yeah.
And I thought that there's the way that we've kind of crafted the book is in a way of a story, and really talking about our perception as a way to kind of be relatable to other people, because you can look online and look at, like I have, and just look at universities that have written sort of like essay type things of what, you know, cultural blends are, or what all these different things are. But I felt that what was lacking was a book, something that was from personal experience. I haven't found anything like that. There probably is stuff out there maybe, but I couldn't find anything, and I wanted to fill that gap. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, yeah, as I was participating in this writing of this book with you, I will put in the show notes how you can get a hold of this book, and the website to that Ashley's also created in relation to the book. But what is to me so amazing about the book is that it is about finding identity today in a culturally blended world where people live in different places. They have nationalities from different places. This is a growing amount of people in the world. And yet the book, although it's a mother-daughter writing it, it's really two almost separate books talking about the same things, because we were talking about the same things as you were growing up. But it's from our own perspective. And I think what's amazing is that you at a very young age were able to put some of these thoughts down, you know, and actually write about them. And just for those listening to get what was going on. I mean, this is before you were even, I mean, when you decided to write the book, you hadn't become an air traffic controller. What were you doing at that time again?
Well, I was working in Wellington, just at a cafe, when we kind of got the idea. It took us 5 years to go from start to finish, and through that time, had I had moved to Canada for 10 months and was working, you know, on the ski fields in Whistler, and then I came back and did air traffic. So that's kind of why it took a long time, but I felt like we went through so many processes with the book, and we were kind of like emotionally going through our own challenges with the book as well, and it kind of formed into something that was the best version it could have possibly been.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting too, because I know there's a lot of people at any age, they have this idea that they want to write a book. I personally feel that there's a book in everybody, and It is amazing at a young age that you decided to really act on that and move through that. How were you able to kind of keep the book kind of as a focus, or you didn't just drop it and leave it? I mean, it was there when you started it. You then go and experience, a job and living in Whistler in Canada. Then you come back, you're not sure what you're doing. Then you're going through training, and then you're moving within your job. I mean, how do you actually fit getting a book done while you're doing all of that at your age?
I think it was a challenge again,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like not only a challenge, but I really felt a purpose with this, and
Yeah.
I really felt that I had a voice that should be heard amongst others, and I felt like this could help people. And so that was why I kind of kept doing it, and I wasn't really too phased about how long it took. It was also a really great, just like creative kind of release or creative
Yeah.
thing I could do outside of the job, because the job is so, especially when I was training, it was so intense, and this just gave me kind of a creative, relaxing time. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I balance the two things together,
Yeah.
really.
I
Yeah.
think that that's a significant um, kind of expression of being able to do the best version of you, because you are able to sort of have this side hustle, something that you're really kind of passionate about, something that you want to do that keeps you grounded through all of the change that actually, happened in your life. So let's kind of fast forward. And yeah, so October of 2022, the book is ready to be published and kind of released to the world. And I distinctly remember then just before that, you coming to me and saying, Mom, this is our story, but if we really want to understand what this means, identity means in our world today, we need to hear other people's stories. And that was the inspiration, that kind of the spark that started the Culturally Blended People community. Can you kind of talk on that a little bit?
Yeah. So in our book, we talk a lot about our perceptions and our journey in our life and the challenges that we dealt with and how we overcame them. And then towards the end of the book, we're starting to we kind of move into more of a global mindset and so yeah, we go from the chapter of global mindset, which is kind of opening up to like, there's more around us. There's culture and there's cultural awareness that we should be aware of and that we should, incorporate into our lives. And then the last chapter, we go into your story. So it's all about really inspiring the reader to go along the journey with us and then be inspired to essentially write their story of where they're from and how to kind of go about answering the question, where are you from, in a way that feels true to them and in a way that doesn't make them feel like they have to hide themselves or, deny a part of who they are because
Right.
people don't believe them. All of
Right.
those kind of things that can come along with the question, where are you from? So we kind of got to that chapter, and that's the end, and we felt like that was a great way to finish the book, because the whole thing is really about inspiring people to feel confident in their blended identity and have clarity on it. And then that's when I was kind of like, well, we've talked a lot about our story, but there's so many other unique stories and original life experiences out there in the world. And we've kind of just left it open. Like, we haven't made a connection with the readers, like, personally. And so I wanted to create a community as kind of like a global hub for all things culturally blended, so that people could connect with one another, because there's so many different challenges that can come along with being culturally blended, and one of those things is being isolated in your feelings, because not
Yeah.
everyone around you can relate, and that's our experience, and other people's might be different, but that's great. That's what the community is there for, to have people with different experiences to come and connect in one global space online, so that it essentially is like this mutual
Yeah.
advice, support, along with fun space that people can have a kind of comfort online too, and they
Yeah.
can connect with others around the world that are similar to them. So along with that, we also wanted to I felt like a really big purpose of this was having cultural awareness and being able to bridge gaps between diversity, because I feel like that's one way that we can actively go about, building bridges between diversity and trying to aspire to a more peaceful society globally. If we
Yeah.
can understand each other, understand why different cultures or countries do different things that might be weird to us, but it's normal there. And that's something I experienced, was people constantly thinking things are weird or not normal. That was my life experience, when in the
Right.
context of that, of me growing up in Dubai,
Mm.
it was normal. And I wanted to create a space where those
Yeah.
kind of things could be explored, talked about. And I felt like that was a really important thing to exist, and I couldn't find anything
So
that
you
already did
created it.
exist. So,
Yeah. I
yeah,
always think that's the best way. If you can't find it, just create it. That's
yeah.
really good. I just love that, Ashley, and how you bring out how you wanted to hear other people's stories. I mean, just for clarity, I helped you co-found the community because I work with online communities myself, but you are now taking the whole community over yourself. I don't know if you have a title for yourself yet, but I
Mhm.
would call you a visionary director of the community. I think I like a director seems like a traffic cop to me, and a visionary director to me means that you don't know exactly where it's going to go. You don't know exactly how it's going to evolve, but there's a vision there. There's something pulling you and pushing you towards something, and we'll see what it's going to grow into. And I think that's what's really exciting. But I will put the link to how you can become a member of the community, because the beautiful thing about the community is by being a member, you get access to all of the stories shared. They are now recordings. I have learned so much from listening to other
Mm,
people's stories. And then we've had special sessions because we had more than 40 people around the world as founding members that were there to just say, I believe in you. I believe what you're doing. I support you. And again, coming back to people within our ecosystems that help us. Yeah. So we are kind of almost running out of time. So I think we're going to just have to have you come on again. But also with, starting this community, you also started a podcast. And I would kind of like to just end, because we'll talk more about the podcast maybe on the next one, but you can mention it now. Or why don't you mention a little bit about the podcast and where it's at the moment?
yeah. So the podcast, we initially did it together, and then I feel like I wanted to take over Culturally Blended a little bit more and have a different style where I was just the only person speaking. um, and so I've sort of started to like kind of generate it again and rejuvenate it. So the podcast that I've been working on now will launch February
Which
2024.
is when this is going to be
Yeah, and so
available. Mm.
it's kind of just like a space, because I feel like I can sit here and just daydream and have all of these thoughts. And so it's a way to just put my thoughts out there within the context of Culturally Blended. And it's a way to kind of just offer people some support and some advice in some way, and to get to know me and what I'm doing. And yeah, just try and reach people who might relate to what I've got to say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. So yeah, this I mean, we are recording this, and I will put this out on the YouTube channel in the same month that you will kind of relaunch that podcast. So in the show notes below, definitely grab that and have a listen to the Culturally Blended People podcast. I'm looking forward to what you're going to be putting on there next year. And also the community is still going, but again, to the backdrop of you doing what you do, you professionally have a job, and can you just share a little bit about your making a big career transition right now anyway?
Yeah, so I'm just about to move. I got a new job it's still an air traffic job, it's just at a different sector. So, this will be a really interesting move, and it's the theme that we are doing for the first quarter of the community, which is all about moving somewhere new and dealing with the challenges of that. and the special sessions are sort of set up so that everyone can have a voice and speak and share what they say and talk about, a specific theme and topic. So that will be kind of a really, really cool topic to talk about while I'm also going through the challenges that come with moving. So there'll be a lot of good stuff that'll come out of that in the special sessions in the community.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. So, Ashley, we are at 30 minutes, so we will have you back on because I do want to ask you more about what's going on with the podcast and what's going on with the community, and more thoughts on what you have in regards to, our identity and in living in our culturally blended life, and also how you are actually able to maintain a job and a profession, as well as just this side hustle along the way. So I will have below links to the podcast, the book, the community, how you can get in touch with Ashley through the website. So do check those out. And Ashley, just thank you once again. This has been really inspiring to people and a lot of food for thought.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.